On September the 18th, 2018, the acting EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler signed a document outlining plans to retract parts of the Refrigerant Management Program regulations expected to come into force in January 2019. In this short video, we will explain what and why. Section 608 of the Clean Air Act, administered by the EPA, was published in 1993. It established the National Recycling and Emissions Reduction Program. The aim of this program was to eliminate emissions of ozone-depleting substances in response to the Montreal Protocol. Since 1993, Section 608 has been revised 8 times, the most recent in 2016. The 2016 changes have been rolled out gradually over 2017, 2018, and the last expected in 2019. To understand what Wheeler proposes to retract, we need to define 2 things. Firstly, the 3 subsections of the Recycling and Emissions Reduction Program, and secondly, the classification of refrigerants and substances. Section 608 is divided into 3 subsections. Part A, the Maintenance and Repair Provisions, requires EPA to promote and make law regulations to reduce the use and emissions of Class 1 and Class 2 substances. Amongst other things, this defines conducting periodic leak inspections, the timeline and procedure for repairing leaks, and record-keeping requirements. Part B, the disposal provisions, requires that the regulations of subsection A include requirements for the disposal of Class 1 and Class 2 substances. While Part C, the venting prohibition, establishes prohibitions on knowingly venting, releasing, or disposing into the environment of any Class 1 or Class 2 substance or their substitutes. Refrigerants, or substances, fall into one of 4 classes. Class 1 and Class 2 are explicitly defined in appendices to the legislation and include all substances with ozone-depleting potential, namely CFCs, halons, and HCFCs. Substitute substances are those used as replacements to Class 1 and Class 2. These substances all have ozone-depleting potentials of 0. Some substitute substances are classed as exempt. These are explicitly defined by the EPA and include carbon dioxide, nitrogen, water, and in specific applications also ammonia, propane, isobutane, and ethane. These substances have minimal or 0 global warming potential. Any substitute refrigerant not specifically exempt from 608 regulations is classed as non-exempt. HFCs, HFOs, and PFCs fall into this category. These substances have significant global warming potential. Viewing these definitions together, before 2019, the regulations have only applied to Class 1 and Class 2 substances. The 2019 implementation will extend all 3 provisions to include non-exempt substances. The recent EPA proposal is to withdraw the extension of the maintenance and repair provisions and the disposal provisions from appliance using only non-exempt substitute refrigerants. The EPA is also taking comment on whether to withdraw the extension of the full set of provisions to non-exempt substitute refrigerants. Authority is the core focus of the reasoning behind this retraction. Fundamentally, does the EPA have the authority to extend the full set of refrigerant management regulations to non-exempt refrigerants? The current EPA administration interprets that some of the 2016 regulation extension does indeed exceed the EPA's authority. The interpretation boils down to specific wording in the original Section 608 legislation. The 95 revision of Section 608C states that the venting prohibition shall also apply to the venting, release, or disposal of any substitute substance for a Class 1 or Class 2 substance. Because substitute substances are specifically referred to, it is argued that the EPA does have the authority to extend Section 608C to include the substitute substances. This is a long-held position of the EPA, and the EPA is not proposing to revisit this section. Knowingly venting, releasing, or disposing any non-exempt refrigerant into the environment will remain prohibited. However, if we look at the wording of 608A, the EPA are required to push regulations regarding the use and disposal of Class 1 and Class 2 substances. They may include requirements to use alternative substances and promote the use of safe alternatives. But because the section does not expressly address whether the EPA can establish the same regulations for substitute substances as ozone-depleting substances, the authority of the EPA to extend 608A to substitute has been called into question. The letter has not yet been published to the Federal Register, but when it is, you will have 45 days to submit your comments. Go to regulations.gov and search for docket number EPA-HQ-OAR-2017-0629. If you believe the EPA does or does not have the authority to extend Section 608 to include non-exempt substitutes, if they should or should not have the authority to do this, or to share how you believe the EPA should regulate with respect to the environment, submit your comments on the Federal Register.